1. Chapter 1, Carrot Boy. Eric woke with a start, finding himself in an unfamiliar place. Lush green fields stretched around him, dotted with vibrant wildflowers. Small animals darted playfully through the grass, their chatter blending with the peaceful hum of nature. In the distance, sturdy trees heavy with fruit stood under a bright blue sky, where fluffy white clouds drifted lazily, softening the sun's glow. The air was alive with sound, the cheerful songs of birds and the gentle rush of a clear river nearby. A cool breeze brushed against Eric's skin, refreshing and soothing. He stood still, marveling at the beauty, but a question nagged at him: is this a dream? An illusion? How did I end up here? As he gazed at his hands, feeling the breeze, a soft voice broke the silence. "What do you think of my home?" it asked. Eric spun around. Behind him stood a mysterious woman with long black hair, dressed in a simple white gown. A strange light, maybe from the sun, maybe from her, blinded him, forcing him to shield his eyes with his arm. He couldn't see her face clearly, but he caught the warmth of her smile. Stunned by her sudden appearance, Eric couldn't find words to answer. He wanted to see her face, to know who she was, but the light kept her features hidden. A strong gust of wind swept through, carrying white flower petals that swirled around her like a delicate dance. Her hair flowed with the breeze, and she seemed to speak again, her lips moving, but no sound reached Eric's ears. The wind's echo and the birds' songs drowned out everything else. "What's happening? Why can't I hear her?" Eric whispered to himself. The woman gestured toward the mountains, the river, the sky, and the animals, as if sharing a story. Her movements were graceful, almost joyful. But then she paused, her hand clutching her chest. Her smile faded, replaced by a look of sadness, as if a heavy worry had settled over her. The world grew quiet, the air still. Eric's heart tugged. He wanted to help, to understand her trouble. He stepped forward, but before he could reach her, she looked up and smiled again, extending her hands toward him. Was she offering something? Asking him to follow? He couldn't tell. Her lips moved, but her words remained lost to him. Frustration welled up, he couldn't even tell if his own voice worked when he tried to speak, or if his words were just thoughts trapped in his mind. Desperate to understand, Eric reached out, hoping to grasp her hands and find answers. As he stepped closer, she spoke again, her voice suddenly clear. "The motherland calls for your help. Will you answer?" Eric froze. "Answer?" he murmured, staring at her gentle smile. "What do you mean?" Before he could ask more, another gust of wind forced his eyes shut. When he opened them, the woman was gone. Instead, he stared up at a ceilingless roof. His hand was outstretched, reaching for nothing. He was back in his small, sweltering hut, lying on a woven mat, soaked in sweat. The familiar heat of his home pressed against him. Eric sat up, rubbing his eyes to shake off the dream. He glanced around the tiny house, patched together with wood and bamboo, typical of their quiet village in Ifugo. Alone, as usual. His parents were already out working the fields. The dream lingered in his mind, vivid but confusing. He could recall every detail, the flowers, the wind, the woman's voice, but her face remained a blur. "Weird dream," he muttered. He stood, folded his mat, and hurried to the kitchen to splash water on his face. Eric Lamagbas was 13, small for his age, with striking black hair. He lived with his family in a modest village surrounded by Ifugo's mountains and forests, where most people earned a living growing vegetables. Their small plot in Lingawin helped supply nearby towns, but it was a hard life. Unlike other kids his age, Eric wasn't rushing to school. He was getting ready for work. Dressed in an orange hoodie and pants, he locked the door and ran to a nearby warehouse. There, workers were busy loading sacks of vegetables onto a truck. "Late again, Carrot Boy," shouted a burly man from the driver's seat. "Hurry up, or we'll leave you." Their group wasn't a major supplier, so they had no steady buyers. They traveled for days, sometimes 4 to 6, hoping to sell everything their families had grown. Eric wasted no time, grabbing a basket of carrots his father had harvested and hauling it to the truck. Minutes later, the truck rumbled off toward the city markets. Eric sat on the sacks, munching on boiled carrots for breakfast. With nothing else to do, he stared out at the passing roads, the dream still flickering in his thoughts. Eric's thoughts. You reap what you sow, that's the first lesson you learn as a vegetable farmer's kid. Every carrot we sell is the result of my family's sweat and care. We rent a small plot of land, plant the seeds, tend them for months, and harvest them to sell in city markets. I join other farmers to hawk our goods, though our leader wasn't thrilled about it at first. "Too young," he said. "Being away from home for days is tough. I miss my family, and it's lonely sometimes. But I love seeing new places, different cities. Hauling heavy baskets is hard for my small frame, but I have to do it. We need the money. My parents borrowed for the seeds and the land, and after all the work, we barely keep enough to get by. It's exhausting. The same struggles, day after day. No guarantee of profit. I don't know how long we can keep living like this, scraping by, barely surviving. Being poor in a poor village feels like a punishment. I'm grateful for my parents and the life we share, but it's not enough to call myself lucky. I have 2 younger sisters, 5 and 8. I want them to finish school, to have a better life. That's why I stopped studying to work with Mom and Dad. I dream of them going to high school in Manila, where people say everything is modern and full of opportunity. I want our family to live there someday. I don't know how much money it'll take, but I'll work hard for it. No matter what. Still, I wonder, can people like us ever have a comfortable life? Do we even have the right to dream in a country stripped of its freedom, ruled by foreign laws? End of thoughts. The truck slowed at a checkpoint guarded by Spanish police in gray uniforms. They inspected passing vehicles, checking IDs and jotting names in a booklet. The government set up these stops to keep rebels, Filipinos who opposed Spanish rule, from entering towns and causing trouble. Some rebels were just bandits, robbing trucks like Eric's to disrupt the Spanish. Eric's thoughts. We're far from the cities, so I don't know much about what's happening in the country. At school, they taught us the Spanish have ruled the Philippines for nearly 500 years. Some Filipinos fight back, calling themselves rebels. But what's the point? They say Spain has millions of soldiers. How can anyone win against that? There are rumors the Spanish have magic or special powers, making them unbeatable. True or not, it doesn't matter to me. They don't bother us much here, and honestly, their presence keeps the bandits away. Freedom? What does that mean to someone like me? Would my life change if the rebels won? I don't see the point. Why risk everything for something so distant when we're just trying to survive? End of thoughts. At the checkpoint, Eric watched the driver hand money to the police. It was a bribe, separate from the taxes they already paid. They had no choice, pay up or face trouble. The elders taught them to stay quiet and comply to avoid danger. It was a tradition passed down through generations of farmers. For Eric, the bribe was just another cut into their meager earnings. But he didn't dwell on it. He'd grown used to it, believing the police protected them from rebel attacks. It was a small price to pay, or so he thought. In the heart of the Philippines, at the bustling core of Manila, recognized as the nation's capital, a vast plaza thrummed with the deafening clamor of people and soldiers. The sun's rays struck the intricate architecture of the surrounding buildings, hinting at the historical significance of this hallowed ground. The air hung heavy, laden with dust and the sweat of thousands gathered in the square. A momentous and powerful spectacle unfolded, a display of authority and fear that had become a grim symbol under Spanish rule. The plaza teemed with approximately 10,000 Filipinos, their faces etched with a volatile mix of fear, confusion, and restrained anger. Encircling them were Spanish soldiers, clad in gleaming metal uniforms and dark fabrics, their rifles raised and poised to act at a moment's notice. Most Filipinos, forcibly torn from their homes and villages, stood beneath the relentless midday heat, their clothes soaked with sweat and dust, their eyes fixed on the platform ahead. Soldiers guarded every corner of the plaza, their voices rising as they herded the crowd into orderly lines, treating them like cattle. On the platform, 5 Filipinos, rebels who had defied the Spanish government, knelt, their hands and feet bound by coarse chains that chafed their skin. Their clothes were stained with blood and mud, testament to the severe trials they had endured before being brought here. Their heads were slightly bowed, yet their eyes burned with unyielding determination, even as their bodies teetered on the edge of collapse. Behind them loomed the grand courthouse gate, its fading yellow paint a mark of time's passage, while before it sat the generals, men in white uniforms adorned with gold and badges, reflecting their exalted status. At the center of the 10 generals stood a robust man, exuding power and authority. He was Viceroy Antonio Magellan, the capital's ruler, dressed in an opulent garment with a golden coat that shimmered under the sunlight. His face was stern, his eyes sharp as blades scanning the crowd. His presence commanded fear and respect, his steps a rhythmic cadence of dominance as he approached the platform center to address the onlookers. Citizens of the Philippines. He began, his voice booming across the plaza like thunder. Today, you bear witness to the historic execution of Filipino rebels who defy the sacred Spanish government. His words dripped with confidence, his hands raised like a king reigning over his domain. He boldly proclaimed his unwavering stance, his voice rising with each syllable. I will eradicate every rebel, every Filipino who disrespects the peace of this nation. There is no place in my rule for these murderers who slaughter innocent citizens, these beasts who shatter the order Spain has bestowed upon you. As long as I am the viceroy governing this land, I will ensure no one succeeds in disrupting the peace Spain has granted you. He roared, his voice infused with fury and resolve. The soldiers behind him nodded, gripping their rifles tighter, ready to obey their leader's every command. As Magellan spoke, Filipino soldiers in simple native attire ascended the platform, their faces devoid of emotion, molded into machines by their masters. Each carried a long rifle, aimed at the 5 kneeling rebels. The watching Filipinos were gripped by terror, their faces streaked with tears and anxiety. Children clung tightly to their parents, while the elderly bowed their heads, overwhelmed by the weight of their emotions. Watch what happens to those who oppose the Spanish government. Magellan shouted, pointing at the rebels. Simultaneously, a soldier slowly raised a red flag, a signal marking the beginning of the end for the bound Filipinos. In an instant, the soldiers fired their rifles, the sharp cracks echoing like thunder across the plaza. Bullets rained upon the 5 rebels, their bodies crumpling as blood flowed like a river across the platform. Moments later, the rebels collapsed to the ground, their eyes still open, brimming with rage and unfinished defiance. Blood pooled on the platform's floor, a dark painting of despair. The onlookers recoiled in horror, their cries of fear and dismay forming a chorus of anguish. Some trembled, hands covering their mouths to stifle sobs, while others wept silently, their faces etched with sorrow and helplessness. The youth fled, unable to comprehend the scene. The soldiers stood unmoved, their expressions blank, as if unaware of the profound pain their actions inflicted. The scene was broadcast live on television and the internet, exposing the brutality to the entire nation. Across the Philippines, rebels watched from their homes or hidden forest outposts, their eyes blazing with fury. "They're animals!" shouted a rebel from a remote village, his fist clenched tightly as he watched the live feed on an old television. "I'll kill them. They'll pay for what they've done to our people," cried another, his voice thick with bitterness and determination as he gripped a sharp buelo. In a northern cave, a group of rebels gathered, their faces contorted with rage as they viewed the execution. "We can't let the Spanish remain in this country any longer," their leader bellowed, his voice piercing the cave's darkness. "We must fight them to our last breath. The blood of our kin must not be in vain." Filipinos from all corners of the nation convened in secret locations, their hearts aflame with hatred and resolve. To them, the world seemed blind to the injustice wrought by the Spanish, and they held no hope for external aid. "The only ones who can free us are our own strength," declared an elderly rebel, his voice heavy with pain yet brimming with hope. "We must fight for our freedom for the next generations of Filipinos, even if it costs us our lives." As rebels seethed across the land, Magellan returned to the platform, his face alight with satisfaction at his plan's success. "You want war, so war you shall have," he shouted, his voice rising into the air like a challenge to the rebels. "I will hunt you all down, wherever you hide. I swear it." His words ignited further chaos among the crowd, splitting Filipinos between fear and rage. Soldiers tightened their watch, rifles at the ready, as the blood on the platform slowly dried under the scorching sun. While rebels roared their plans for vengeance, their hearts burned with a fire ready to ignite at any moment. The air crackled with tension, and the Philippines stood on the brink of a war that would reshape its history. End of Chapter 1.